Now let's return to Westminster and our top story this morning, where protesters are still on the roof of the Houses of Parliament. They're campaigning against expanding Heathrow Airport. Michelle De Leo is the director of Flying Matters, which is a coalition of trade unions, business, tourism groups, farmers in the developing world and the aviation industry, which supports sustainable growth in air travel. She's in our central London studio now. Michelle De Leo, your reaction to these protests this morning?
Well, I think the protest is misjudged and misguided, not to mention irresponsible. And there are a couple of things that we need to really get into perspective here. The first, obviously the main issue here is whether this is the right way to protest. And the second issue is it the right target? The UN panel on climate change puts aviation's contribution to climate change at 2% of global carbon emissions, and they predict it will rise to 3% by 2050. And it sounds like a small amount, but it's an amount which the industry takes incredibly seriously. And it's set itself some incredibly stringent targets to reduce the fuel consumption of new aircraft by 50% by 2020, and it's well on target to meet those targets. So we need to look at that and take that into account when we're talking about aviation's contribution to climate change. And the other thing to really bear in mind, which actually this demonstration really doesn't take into account, is that growth in air transport is driven by demand. 20 years ago, people couldn't afford to fly, and today most people can afford to fly at least occasionally. And so we need to make sure that in today's multicultural world, we're able to provide the facilities to enable people to maintain those family and social ties with family who live and work abroad. And as you said at the beginning, we represent a whole broad range of organisations that wouldn't normally coexist in the same sentence. We represent trade unions, business and farmers in the developing world who are incredibly concerned about the direction that this debate is taking, particularly when they rely on their fresh produce reaching UK markets in the belly hold of passenger aircraft at places like Heathrow. So we need to look for policy solutions which balance economic sustainability with environmental sustainability, and protests like this just don't help the debate at all.
Michelle De Leo, accepting the rights of farmers and people to travel that you've just discussed, what about the rights of people who have to live on the flight path to Heathrow and have to put up with late night flights and early morning flights and have their lives disrupted? These people would say they are trying to represent their point of view. You wouldn't deny them that right, would you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, those are all very legitimate concerns, and they're concerns which the industry is addressing, which the government is addressing through the consultation. But we need to look at what the strategic importance is of places like Heathrow, particularly for the UK economy. And many thousands of jobs rely on it, not to mention thousands of jobs around Heathrow. And it's quite clear that there are many people who live in the area who of course are disturbed by the airport, but actually rely on it. And so, we need to be clear that we're having a balanced debate about the way we deal with that. And I say again, protests like this, which actually skew the debate, don't allow us to have a sensible discussion about the way that we address those problems.
Michelle De Leo, Director of Flying Matters, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.